are at the home of John R. White, the author of the wonderful graphic novel, or soon-to-be graphic novel, sorry. The novel.
That's our hope. Yeah, it's just a straight novel right now. But the next plan, as we were discussing is to get it to a graphic novel stage.
Sorry, yeah, we were discussing that beforehand. Tales of the Airship Neverland. I almost called it Starship because of the second or the sequel to it.
It's Tales of the Airship Neverland. The second book is Captain Hook and the Pirates of Mars. The concluding book in the trilogy is it's called Dust and Ash, and then what I'm currently writing is the prequel series called the Tinkerbell Chronicles. Much like Tales of the Airship Neverland is the series, the Tinkerbell Chronicles is a series, and the first book is actually called Liberty Bell.
Very cool. What's your background?
My background, in all honesty, one would have to say is in philosophy and religion. When I was a young person, I actually wanted to preach, and I went to school for that. I went to seminary for a year. I've got 120 hours, but that's spread out over almost 25 years.
Right.
Now it's more gone to philosophy, world religions, and logic, and that was what my training is in, so naturally I'm going to become a science fiction writer. I promise not to create a new version of Scientology. That's all I can promise anyone.
Well, you've focused on how unqualified you are for it as a philosophy major, but now you told me a bit about your childhood. Your father was
well, my father was a officer on fleet ballistic submarines. He was a nuclear weapons officer. So when people asked me what my dad's job was, I used to tell them to kill every Russian that lived. He would come home, it's like, apparently you didn't shoot the missiles. We're good. I mean, but it was a very weird childhood because my dad would sit down and tell us, okay, you guys were at ground zero, but we're only 6 on the list. He would actually tell us that my sister Liz and I were watching MASH after high school, we're in New London, Connecticut, and a bolt of lightning hit the house. But that's not what we thought. All we saw was there was a huge flash of white light and then an explosion. We literally hugged each other and waited for the fire blast to come because we thought the Russians had nuked the base. No, a bolt of lightning hit the house. Hit my older sister who was upstairs in the shower. But that was our immediate reaction. Oh, it's all over.
We're goners.
Yeah, so I think that doesn't build the most rational mentality. My dad was he was heavily into science fiction, and he had a huge library, and that's what I grew up on. I grew up on comics. I grew up on John Norman of Gore, Tolkien, the Destroyer series. Stephen King was just kind of firing up. So it was a very genre-based childhood, and so one of my original goals was to make films. That didn't work out, so naturally I'd go the 180 degrees and think about becoming a minister. I did not have a normal childhood. I think that's reflected in my writing. I think people can see this guy has a lot of knowledge in a lot of areas, and he's just throwing it into the pot. That's why I like metafiction. You take a little bit of everything.
You were all over the place as a child.
Yeah,
locationally and mentally.
We lived in 3 nations. In about 10 states. I met everybody. When I was in school, I sat there and talked to Colin Powell. I've talked with Henry Height. During the Clinton. The Clinton impeachment. I grew up with Turks, Persians. Before the revolution, my dad was training the Shavaran subcorps. I used to ride on a nuclear submarine on dependence cruises. I've climbed to the top of Mount Vesuvius. Did I have a great childhood? No, but I had an amazing. I've had an amazing life, and I think as a writer, that's just the best thing ever.
Mm-hmm. So extremely diverse.
Yeah, a little bit chaotic.
Well, diverse is one good way to put it.
Yeah.
But yeah, chaos too. So you come by the knowledge of traveling as Peter would do, and
well, I think that the best part of my childhood, you know, that came out in the books, this is the one place I've never been actually, is London. I'd made plans to go last year, I think, or the year before. I had the tickets bought, I had the money bought, and then it was after the last World Steve Expo, and I decided what I didn't want to go because I didn't have anybody to go with, and so all my knowledge of London is actually from maps, but all my knowledge of Navy, you know, because it's the Airship Neverland, it's part of the Royal Fleet, that all comes legitimately from being a Navy brat.
Right, exactly.
And so that was spot on.
Exactly, that's what I was thinking. You come by your naval knowledge and tendencies quite honestly.
Yeah, and I'm sure my dad, because I sent him a copy of the book, will critique things like, if I got wrong. He'll be like, I'll be like, it's fiction, I can rewrite it.
Yeah. And you can apologize to Dad later.
Yeah.
So how did you come up with the idea for a new version of Peter Pan?
Well, that was, if anybody was at World Steam Expo and they came to the panel, the first picture I showed was a lady by the name of Tess Fowler. And for anybody that is in the graphic novel or comic industry, hire Tess Fowler. She's brilliant. We were talking about childhood. We both had, very dark childhoods, a lot of abuse. And so she'd written a blog on it. I started talking to her about it because I read her blog, and we wound up having like a 12-hour, 14-hour conversation. It started off on Facebook, and then we wound up talking to each other. By the end of the conversation, we'd start talking about things that she was doing, and she was doing a graphic novel called The Seven. I'm not sure what came of it. It was steampunk, and I didn't know what steampunk was. She explained it to me, and I'm like, oh, yeah. It's Victorian stuff. I was like that. I didn't know steampunk had a name or was a genre. And when I was with my ex-wife in like 1984, we were traveling from Texas to Ohio, and I was hiding out from the in-laws, and I wrote and illustrated a graphic novel just for my own amusement called Gaslight Incorporated, which was kind of like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. But I didn't know what to do with it, and I threw it in a corner. And then League of Extraordinary Gentlemen came in, and I threw it in a deeper corner. But I'm like, oh, yeah. And so we talked about that. I mentioned that. And I'm like, I think Peter Pan would be a lot of fun to steampunk. And she's like, go for it. And so 10 weeks later, I'd written 100,000 words, which, according to the Jay Lake and Gail Carringer and G.D. Fox, is not a normal thing to do.
Yeah, writing a novel in 10 weeks is pretty impressive.
A lot of adrenaline, a lot of Mountain Dew.
And your work background, I also thought that was fascinating.
Well, I mean, I was diagnosed bipolar 17 years ago, which I didn't know, and I was very grateful for the diagnosis because it meant I wasn't an asshole. It just meant that I was a complicated individual, pardon my language. But up until that point, I'd gone through 80-some-odd jobs in my life. Just couldn't keep it, which I found out is very normal for someone that's bipolar, especially if they're not diagnosed. Once I got the diagnosis, I was able to hold a job. The longest job that I enjoyed and the best job I ever enjoyed is I was an exterminator for Orkin. That was just an amazing job, because you're pretty much left alone to do your own devices. If you accomplish something, you obviously you succeed, and you get to help people. Gross as hell sometimes. I've been covered head to toe in 1,000 cockroaches in D.C. But when you see that you're actually helping people, it was something I enjoyed. Not for everyone. Will I ever put it in a book? I seriously doubt it. But if somebody said you could be an exterminator again today, your books aren't selling, I'd jump at the choice. It's one of those absolutely weird things that will be a trivia question perhaps some years later. What was the job that John White really enjoyed? He was an exterminator. Strange man.
Huh. He liked hanging.
But I mean, I've been a courtroom artist. I have a mural hanging in the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. I've sold artwork to Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. You know, but being an artist, unless you're really famous, you really don't get to be just a painter to pay the bills. Usually wind up, you know, being an author. You got to do something else to pay the bills. What do I do right now? I work at a gas station, part-time.
And I've looked at some of your artwork around your apartment. It is gorgeous. Absolutely.
I appreciate that. I've had pieces appraised at very high prices. However, that's really great. You can appraise anything for anything. Question is people going to pay for that? I'll put it in my books. I mean, the artwork in the book, you know, and the cover, I mean, that's all stuff I did. Actually, most of the cover art is Photoshop. But I'll Photoshop stuff and then I'll do a painting of it. But, you know, I'm an artist, I'm a writer. Obviously, you know, I got to do something else for a living right now.
I understand. So, John, tell me about your book.
Well, Tales of the Airship Neverland, I mean, the first book is basically the spiel that I was using when I was selling it is Nikola Tesla accidentally creates a pocket universe. He has a little incident in Siberia in 1908, small explosion, and he creates a pocket universe. He gets trapped in it and finds himself caught in this war between Admiral James Hooker and Admiral Winifred Darling, Wendy Darling. He runs a revolution, and they have to take Peter, who is 4 years old, and hide him. They find a way to come to our universe, and they hide him in our universe. 18 years later, they go get him to bring him back and put him on the throne because Hooker has taken over the throne of Brighton. And when they find him, he is a staggering drunk with no idea who he is. And so, of course, you have all of the characters from J.M. Barrie's world. You have Hooker, you have Smee, you have Nana, you know, John and Michael. However, I've taken those characters and run in directions completely, you know, contrary to I think that Barrie would have ever had. And I got a very high compliment at World Steam Expo. A young lady had bought the book on Friday night after our panel, and we saw her Saturday or Sunday, and she had said that she'd spent most of the time up in her room reading the book.
Really?
And I'm like, please go to the con.
Yeah,
you know, you'll hurt Morgan's feelings.
There's so much going on
yes,
here.
Yeah, please
reading my book.
Yeah, go see the Men Who Should Not Be Blamed for Nothing. Go see Abney. Go do something.
But
thank you. I really appreciate that. And so I was very excited that she was so enamored with it. You know, that's the type of feedback that you want to hear as an author. I mean, I've gotten really, you know, and maybe it's a bit pompous to say, I've gotten no negative feedback from the book. You know, the worst feedback I'd got from my editor when he's like, we need to fix this, we need to fix this, we need to fix that. You know, a little tear. You know, things had to be changed. But I'm pleased with it, and I hope that people enjoy it.
So, what's that you've got in front of you? Not the typewriter.
Okay, this is the original hard copy. I mean, there were 2 or 3 printouts that I had done. This was the last printout, the last unedited printout. It's actually currently now on auction on eBay, and it's for charity. I used to work as the national art director for World Steam Expo, or sorry, not for World Steam Expo, for Honor Flight. Honor Flight sends World War II veterans and now Korean veterans to DC free of charge. Probably one of the most noble charities I know of. So I wanted to put the book out there, and actually in the book there's no handwritten notes, there's doodles and stuff like that. A lot of details about the making of it and things like that. You know, hopefully it sells well. I'd like to raise at least $300 because that's the price of sending. Basically, it costs Honor Flight to send a veteran is about $300. So you know, if it sells well, you know, we can get one more veteran out to DC because I mean the average veteran's now 90 plus. You know, and so. You know, I'm not, you know, in all honesty, I'm not going to sit down and reread this. I'm going to pick up my Nook, and if I'm going to reread my book, I'm going to read it on my Nook or digital. It's just something like I said, you know, steampunk has been very good to me. specifically World Steam Expo has been amazing to me. I mean, people like Mike Shea, Tom Downey, Morgan, all the people at World Steampunk, specifically the Detroit Steampunk community, has really embraced me, has embraced Airship Neverland. I mean, last year I was a volunteer, crashed out in the volunteer room, being fed cold tacos, by people that, were taking pity on the volunteers. This year, my lovely wife Mary over in the corner there, her kids, one of her kids' girlfriends, they put us up, in a really lovely room at the Hyatt. I had my own panel. I got to sit on 2 author panels. I mean, one with, Mike Lee, G.D. Fox, Gail Carringer, Jay Lake. That was an amazing experience. Steampunk has been very good to me. I want to make certain that any blessings that I get, I'm able, to pour back to other people. Which is why I put the book out there. It's something that would sit on the shelf like dust. I can put it out. Maybe somebody will enjoy it, and we can do something for somebody else. It's just the way I was raised.
Very cool. Now, John, at the World Steam Expo, I had the pleasure of coming in and, well, actually towards the end of a panel where you had these amazing folk in beautiful costumes, and what was going on?
Well, you caught the Friday night panel where I talked about things, but then we brought in our audio drama. In our audio drama, we're taking chapters, actually, of the unedited book, and dramatizing them like the old radio programs, like Lanigan vs. the Ants, War of the Worlds, things like that.
Oh yeah, the old Murray Hill records. I loved those as a kid.
Absolutely. I did stuff that when I was in high school, I used to go into the library and I would take the cassettes home and I would listen to them. I always liked that's where Foley art really started. And so I can't remember. Mike Shea got the idea. I got the idea, but it was kind of symbiotic. And he organized a very talented group of actors, and we've cast everybody, and we did two episodes, which in the final edited book I believe was chapters 17 and 18. In the unedited it was like chapters 21, 22. But we picked parts that we could basically introduce our characters without really giving away too much out of the plot. So we in the first chapter we did episode I believe it's listed on the internet is episode 11, where you meet Wendy, you meet Alistair, Peter's shadow, you meet Tink, and then the next chapter is pretty much Tink and Peter meeting for the first time, when they find Peter. And I mean, of course, I wrote the stuff. It amused me. That's why I wrote it. But to actually have this talent, team, and I have to remember, there's Chris, there's Courtney, there's Amy Hurd, Tony, and I can't pronounce his last name correctly, but Tony, our narrator, just, Mark Speck, it's Alistair. It's amazing actors, and they really took the characters and made them their own. I mean, even took, just vocally, the characters and directions I hadn't anticipated. I mean, Amy Hurd is Wendy. It's like Mary Poppins action hero, and funny stuff. And I mean, just even listening to it, I'll fall down, still laughing just the way Chris does Peter. I'm not naming everybody. I mean, I'm just because I'm trying to go through all this, but. They're on iTunes. We had one problem with there was a mishap labeling it. I think one of the episodes is listed explicit, and we're getting that corrected. There's nothing explicit on it. There's nothing explicit in my books. But getting to do this is just a dream come true. We started at chapter 17, 18. Now we got to go back to the next one. We're going to be doing, I think, on the 24th. We're going to start recording chapter 1. And that's where you get to meet, Hooker for the first time, and see what a horrible, horrible human being is. And Mike Shea is actually the voice of Hook, but John Strangeway, also known as Steampunk Boba Fett, is our model. Courtney Zimmer is our vocal actress for Tink, but Bonnie Scott is the model, so it's almost like animation. Here's the voice, here's what it look like, and you just get surrounded by a ton of people that are supposed to be different people. It's a bit psychotic.
Mike Shea's awesome.
Mike Shea is a wonderful person. He's one of the most ethical people I've ever run across, and I'm going to give him props on that. And he's a very, very smart guy. And if you have an opportunity to hire him, he is a good person to work with.
Speaking of hiring, how is this whole thing being funded, this audio?
Yeah, therein lies the rub. The audio production is people are paid on the back end. We have a percentage breakdown where sales occur, then the revenue is broken across the back end. That's really the only affordable process that we can use. Could we try and do a Kickstarter? Possibly. But this was the business paradigm that we built up, and that everyone said, okay, that's what we'll work with. So please buy stuff so actors can get paid. And I can make some money somehow, somewhere. Also, the other thing I was going to add in there before I forget is John Magnificent did the orchestral score.
Absolutely.
And best business decision I ever made. John actually gets all the proceeds for the music. Everything he downloads when you buy an album for John, that's all his money. And I was perfectly fine with that. Because he has an amazing following. You Google, Airship Neverland, you're going to wind up with John Magnificent's music. Some of the most beautiful music I've ever had the pleasure of having any part of. To say that I inspired it, or that it was inspired by work that I did, was just amazing. He's a brilliant composer.
Absolutely.
And he did all the music himself too.
So John, I like to close my interviews with giving the person an opportunity to tell me something weird and wonderful, whether it's an anecdote or something that they've got going on in the future, something that's happened in the past that their fans would like to know.
I know that the number one question has been what's next, and I just built a web page for the Tinkerbell Chronicles, and I'm working on book 1, Liberty Bell, and as we talked about, giving cameos, anything that happens now if people get cameos, it's going to be in the Tinkerbell Chronicles series. That's where I hope to put in Mike Shea, Tom Downey. I'm going to talk to Eli August, see if he'll let me do a cameo of him in there. What's next after the Tinkerbell Chronicles? And the plot of that, just real quickly, is that Fixer Bell, Tinkerbell's mom, gets caught up in a plot where Native Americans have run across the Necronomicon and are going to unleash Cthulhu to get rid of the white people. And I'm even there. I'm doing my research. I've been talking with Professor Mann over at the University of Toledo, who's a Native American expert. And next after this will be a Gothic horror with Tinkerbell's mom running up against Dracula, Van Helsing, and doing some amazing things in there. And I promise there will be no sparkly vampires. The only thing that sparkles will be Fixer Bell. And I don't know if it's actually going to be a trilogy, if it's going to be two books. I don't know at this particular point. I only have 2 books plotted out, and I'm 20,000 words into this one. So if people want to get cameos, they can hit me up. I've already started recruiting models
really?
for the characters there. I mean, Sandy Katz is Becky Thatcher. I'm going to ask Eli. I don't know if he'd be willing. I think he'd be a great model for Huck Finn. And I've got Caliban as Frankenstein's monster on the crew. There's Jim the runaway slave, because we're doing Huck Finn, and then there are a ton of characters that will be coming up. That I like to go to the steampunk community and see if somebody will volunteer. It's not paid, but volunteer to be a model, because it's just a way again of giving back. That's why I like dropping cameos. People I call my immortals, real people that become characters. Because to me the steampunk community is actually fairly close-knit, and it's my way of giving back to the people in Detroit area, World Steam Expo, people I just have a profound set of debt personal debt to I would not be where I am if it wasn't for these people. And you're winding up here. Like I said, I am extremely grateful. First to God, to my lovely wife Mary, and to World Steam Expo and the Detroit Steampunk community. I simply wouldn't exist as an author, and Tales of the Airship Neverland wouldn't be where it is if it wasn't for the support of these people and kind people such as yourself.
Well, thank you very much. And from Toledo, Ohio, in the home of John Randall White and his lovely wife Mary, this is the Weird Review.